All right, Cap. So, cool little conversation we have today. There was a letter released a couple weeks ago by one Colin Kaepernick.
Mm-hmm.
He sent a letter requesting a tryout to see if one of the teams in that professional football league here in the United States, if he can get one of the teams
Give
to
him a
give him a
tryout.
tryout.
Yeah,
Yeah.
get a chance for a practice squad. Yeah, he was looking at the NFL with Aaron Rodgers going down. He wanted to see that, hey, like maybe I can try to get something in a practice squad position. So he released that letter, and I called you. We were actually at a conversation in text, give you a phone call. It's kind of the precipice of starting this whole video. But sorry, go into it.
No. So, no. I'm gonna throw it to you because I never even thought about having the conversation about it because I didn't see anything that was particularly newsworthy with this. But you had some pretty strong opinions, so I just kind of wanted to because
I,
me and you, we've had like conversations in the past that I've had to say, hey, a lot of what's out there in the media is not accurate because this is the timeline of events and this is what's actually happened, not that.
right.
And, you kind of looked at it, you verified my assertions, and then it, somewhat changed your opinion, which was not really it wasn't really what I was trying to get you to do to change your opinion. I was just presenting the facts as they were rather than how they were framed to make the man look bad. But you had some very interesting things to say. Your original thoughts when you saw the letter. What was that?
I, I
That
thought I thought I thought it was kind of cringe by Kaepernick and a little bit pathetic to be releasing a letter to join a league that he kind of said is modern day slavery. And just, I guess this is my perspective on it, right? If a league or an organization or a job has shown they don't give a fuck about you, they don't care about your livelihood, they don't like you, right? Let's just call it what it is. He's been kind of blackballed around the league, right? I'm not saying Kaepernick lit it up his last season. I've actually been one of those people that say, like, 16-4 touchdown. The team wasn't great. He wasn't really lighting it up either.
yeah.
His
All their
completion
all their all
percentage.
stars fucking retired once the concussion report came out.
Yeah,
They're like, nah, I'm good.
a lot of people retired, and I think like Kaepernick, though, I think should have been in the league as a backup at the very least. I think Kaepernick was decent enough to still be in the league. So I'm not saying this is one of these people that are like, oh, he was never that good of a football player. That'd be foolish to stay. I think Kaepernick brings a unique skill set. I mean, you see people like Colt McCoy still in the fucking league, and he's
He's
not
still
that
in the
good.
league.
Yes, he is still in the
Did
league.
he
Yes,
still look like a child?
pretty much. He's got a baby face, but I think
Still. Oh, wow.
what
That's
I th-
interesting.
what I think when it comes down to it, I just am highly unimpressed with Kaepernick because it's like, okay, this league has shown you so much disrespect. You said it's modern day slavery. You've kind of, been outspoken, and I'm not completely against that. Why would you want to go back to that league that treated you so bad? And it looks like to me he's begging for an opportunity, and he's desperate. And that's where a lot of I think it's kind of pathetic on Kaepernick at this point to be begging the NFL for an opportunity. Do I think he could be a decent practice squad QB? I don't know. He hasn't played in like about 6 years at this point, so it's going to be very difficult. Usually after a year or two, it's extremely difficult to come back to the game. I mean, Deshaun Watson, after getting some massages in his own time, he had to take a year or two off of football, and it's been rough for him to get it going, and he's far younger than Kaepernick. And then we were having that conversation, and you had a little bit of a different take on it, though.
Yeah. The player that came to mind, I believe, was Doug Flutie. The dude was out of the league for like a really long time, came back after age 40 because somebody had a need, and he did pretty well. Obviously, the league is not the same. The league is softer now. So I would probably think that with the rule changes that make the sport less entertaining to watch, but it's safer for the players on the field, I think that you can make a logical inference that someone who has not been in the league for 6 seasons, you would think, just from his vantage point, that maybe he would have a little bit of an easier time rejoining a league if he's basically not going to get his helmet popped off with his head still stuck in it.
So the main difference though with Kaepernick, right, is he's refused other opportunities, the XFL, USFL, the Canadian Football League. Like when Flutie, quote unquote, stopped playing, he didn't stop playing football though, right? He was playing in the Canadian League. You know, I don't know if it was him or someone else played in NFL Europe. Like these quarterbacks that have had to take long breaks usually have to go to the CFL, but now you have the XFL, USFL, which those two leagues are now merging to become one spring season football league professionally. But that's how you keep fresh. And I think for me with Kaepernick, right, it's not that I don't believe at one point in time he could have been a quality option. I mean, look, Zach Wilson is fucking garbage. He's terrible. He's not a NFL level quarterback. I think if you took 2017 Kaepernick, put him on the Jets, they would have a winning record in my opinion. All right, I think Kaepernick at that time would be good. But now that Kaepernick has been out of playing football for about 6 years, hasn't played anything professionally, and hasn't kept up with his football, I would say, just his football life in that general. I think it's just a bit much to now, 6 years out, ask him to be getting an NFL spot. If he was truly serious about football, truly, passionate about his love of the game, while he's making millions in endorsement deals, could have been playing in the CFL. So at some point in time, which now owners and teams are going to use, well, he hasn't played for 6 years, that excuse is out the fucking window. So if he's playing actual professional football league, even if he's playing somewhere in Germany in some fucking scrub league, right? If he's playing professional football league, there's that you lose that argument and like, okay, well, what's the harm in giving this guy a shot at even a tryout? So, and I think Kaepernick has done himself a disservice by continually refusing these other opportunities that have been presented to him before. That's just my opinion on it.
Well, I'm going to agree with you on that. But I think that it comes down to this, really. And I'll use a different example, right?
Mm-hmm.
Could I theoretically walk into an emergency room and apply for a job as a surgeon? Theoretically.
Theoretically, yeah.
Did I go to medical school? Did I
No.
go through residency? Did I pass all the board certifications? Do I have any experience? I can request employment. I'd be wasting my goddamn time.
Right.
But I have that right to request employment, and the employer has the right to deny employment.
Right.
And it doesn't really have to be based on anything as long as it's not based on discrimination, political affiliations, what do they call it, sexual orientation, or anything like that. We do have anti-discrimination laws, but beyond that, I mean, you can't say that they're not allowing him to play because he's black. 80% of the league is black, right? So, so he has the right to request employment, and they have the right to accept or deny his request. When I looked at the letter, because that's the only content that I will consume that has anything to do with that league, is if his name is in the article, because I want to see if somebody's going to give him a tryout, and if he makes it back to the league, I'll watch the sport again. If he doesn't, I won't watch the sport again. I don't read the articles. I don't care who got injured. I don't care who threw for 800 yards. I don't give a fuck. Because that's the stand that I chose to take. And I'm not saying that anybody else should take that stand. It's just a stand that I chose to take because I just thought that the lack of ethics on the part of the league was reprehensible. And so that was just my opinion. But I thought that the letter that he wrote was respectful. I thought that he expressed himself well. And I thought that the employer made their decision by going in another direction. So for me, I don't know if you noticed, but I didn't bring this up to you when I could have done that 2 weeks ago because I just thought that it was a non-issue completely. But then as you've explained yourself, I have to say that from a tactical standpoint, I mean, we talked about Johnny Manziel.
Yeah.
Johnny Manziel was
old
exposed
Yeah.
very quickly.
Like the first quarter, first 5 minutes. Yeah,
I,
pretty bad
I, I
at the
think I
NFL.
think in training camp, but they had already blown a number one pick on this guy.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, the Cleveland team. If I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken, right?
Cleveland Browns. Yeah.
Okay, so he was exposed walking into the practice facility. They're like, wow, that guy walks weird. He's not supposed to. He doesn't belong here. But what he did was he went and played at some bullshit league somewhere,
Yeah.
and I think it was pretty shitty over there too, if I'm not mistaken, or
Yeah.
at least mediocre.
He tried to play in the CFL, couldn't cut it, and then he did like some weird league, some weird interactive league where fans can pick the plays. And I mean, yeah, I mean Manziel as a football player just isn't that good.
But to your point, he at least tried to go
Yep.
down to the so-called minor leagues, regardless of whether he. I mean, but it was clear, he was drinking, he was getting in trouble, he was wifing 304s. Who isn't it the same 304 who is now trying to marry one of the Pauls or something like that? I don't know.
I mean, I have no idea.
I don't know. I don't care
I don't
about
follow
any of
it
these
that.
people. Yeah,
I don't
know.
like
Yeah.
Johnny Manziel loved the football life. He didn't love football. He liked the life that it provided to him. I'll say this: if
I think he had access to that life already because he came from money, but I think that
No,
he
but
wanted to stardom.
well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The money he probably had, right? But the stardom, being on like the cover of magazines. Hell,
Yeah.
if Manziel was in today's NCAA with the NIL deals, he would have stayed a whole 4 or 5 years if he could. Maybe try to get a 6-year extension because he would have been making quite a bit of money. My man liked to party and take lines off hookers. But I think when it kind of comes down to it, getting to Kaepernick, I just can't respect an individual in this regard. That organization, that job treated you like shit, right? Why the fuck would you go back to a place that you felt made you feel like a modern day slave? And that's where, for me, I don't care about him trying to get a football job. I don't care about him trying to be a quarterback. I just think it looks a little bit desperate. And to go back to the same organization that you feel like treated you like a slave, it's just like, you know what I mean? It just doesn't vibe with me well, right? I would just I would take less money elsewhere to be treated with fucking respect. That's just my opinion.
But and again, I would be more critical of your opinion if I didn't know you. But the fact remains, Cap, that 99% of people in this country feel like they are being treated by slaves by their employer, yet they show up every day. Like, that is life as a modern American. Now, you were in a situation where you thought that you were treated poorly.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, you were offered, the offer that was given to you was very, very generous by
The former employer.
and you looked at the offer and outright declined it, even though it would have been financially prudent for you to do so on the surface.
Yeah.
But you valued the respect more than the money, and that's why you are who you are.
Right.
When I look at Kaepernick and you say, "Hey, I don't respect the guy that would go back to that league," I look at the average American. I'm pretty sure 9 out of 10 Americans believe that they are being disrespected by either the employer or
fair.
someone who is above them at their place of employment. And the other thing is, I think about, and here we cover the UFC on this channel, the Filthy Casual MMA Watch Party.
Mm-hmm.
And we look at the fighters, and the fighters get paid next to nothing, and the executives are getting paid all the money, and the investors are the next ones up getting paid. But the employees and the product, I believe they're being disrespected. But they still show up and sign the contracts, right? They still they still allow themselves to be locked in the cage. I've seen like whole fucking feuds with fighters and Dana White. Dana White talking shit about the fighters talking shit about Dana White, but in the end, the fighters go through their training camps, they make weight, they step in the cage and put their fucking lives on the line anyway.
Right.
That's just This is a capitalist society. So when I think about it, you hear fighters, talk about how horrible the UFC is, and then people are like, well, why do you want to be in the UFC? Well, the best competition is there, and I believe I belong there.
I mean, to be fair, they'd probably be better off starting up a podcast and then pretending to be a boxer and getting all these fights. But that's a whole different.
Yeah. But a lot of those guys like Tyron Woodley and Nate Diaz. They're doing the sideshow Bob thing. And they're getting paid crazy money in comparison to when they were actually fighting in a legit league.
Which is fucking sad. I do agree in that regard, especially with the UFC. They should be paying their fighters better. They should be treating their fighters with higher regard.
But the fighters have to use the leverage that they have as the product and the employee and withhold their labor. Come together, withhold your labor until the UFC is willing to collectively bargain, but the fighters aren't willing to do that, so they're going to continue to take that UFC spiked dildo in their anus.
The UFC doesn't have a union, right?
No, but they could.
And that's why a lot of these other leagues, these professional leagues, have unions, right? The NHL, NFL, NBA. They all have player unions. And I think with the UFC, if they're going to get compensated far better, I mean, let's just call it as look at basketball players, bro. And some of it I think is a bit excessive. You got role players getting like life-changing generational.
Mike Conley stole $200 million, son. I'm never letting that go.
I respect it. Just
hey, Mike, if you see this, I don't hate you, okay? I just thought when you got $36 million a year, when you were the highest paid player in the league, what were the Grizzlies thinking? I mean, I know that after you signed on the dotted line, you're like, let me get out of here before these white people change their mind.
No.
Come on, son.
I mean, like, I think when it kind of comes down to it, though, like, that's where the UFC needs to go. Well, the NFL's got a union. Every single of these.
But the UFC can only go there if the fighters actually recognize the levers that they have as both the product and the employee.
Yeah.
And come together and exercise that right. With most of them being American. If you're not willing to become part of the union and you're willing to do this every man for yourself thing, well, guess what? You're going to continue to get 15% of the yearly revenues when the other league's players are getting between 38 and 50%. Yeah. So if you want to allow the UFC to continue to do this to you because you want the higher competition, well, you got to deal with it. The fighters aren't happy, but they got to feed their families. So the way that I see it is, as long as Colin Kaepernick is looking at that football league and he's not claiming that they're trying to use some sort of racial bias or he's not trying to bribe anybody, he's not trying to blackmail anybody, and he's being respectful, I have no problem with him seeking employment. Now, the employer has a choice to make. With all the available options to do the job, would I rather have this employee or that employee?
Yeah.
Right? And for me, that is the end of it for me.
Yeah.
In this particular instance.
I think for me, though, I wouldn't respect it, but I'd get it, right?
Right.
If he went to the USFL, XFL, because they're merging, and if he went to the Spring League, did really well, like A.J. McCarron played in the XFL this last season, and he did well for them.
Alabama guy, right?
Yep, Alabama guy. He was in the NFL, he was okay backup. He just got signed again, I think it was to the Bengals again. And I think for me, when I look at it, it's like, play some professional football. Get
Right.
some games on tape. Get rid of the narrative that people like even I say, well, he hasn't played for 6 years. We don't know how he'll look. And I think that would allow him probably to get a practice squad tryout. I mean, practice squad has completely changed now in the NFL. You're seeing veterans like 10 to 14-year vets actually be put on practice squads and be kept around. Which, by the way, practice squad, that's a nice goddamn paycheck. When you look how much practice squad players make per week, I'm like, man, damn, son, I'll go be a shitty kicker for a couple weeks and make a year's worth of money. But I think when it kind of comes down to it, he's got to do that. Like, he's got to get some football on tape, and he probably would get a shot. I mean,
well,
I think that probably would happen.
I don't think you're allowed to wear skates on the field, Cap. So I don't know how you would manage that.
I'll get those wheelies, like those wheelies. It's all made with shitty turf these days. I don't need cleats just to get some wheelies on there. I'll be good, bro. I'll have a 4.4, 40-yard on my wheelies. So I'm good.
Yeah, I don't know. So, I mean, I think that you and I don't know how much we disagree, but we're going to let the viewer decide what their position is. I know that the conservatives are going to, make their anti-Kaepernick comments, and, some of our black viewers may or may not have some pro-Kaepernick comments. But in the comment section below, I implore you to kind of put some of the political stuff to the side and really just look at this particular situation as is and give us your opinion. Like, because, I look at it like this, right? If you take his name off and you insert any other former quarterback that has not been so polarizing from a socio-political standpoint, what would your opinion be in that instance?
Yep.
Like, that's the kind of opinion I want to hear. But as I already know, you guys are going to say whatever the fuck you want in our comment section, because this is the Talking Shit Podcast, home of the cold truth
And the hot take.
We'll see you in the next one.